Hello, welcome. Today I'm not talking about other people's writing like I usually do, but rather my own. I've been writing every day in 2025, and I want to tell you about the process of it. So here are some in-process clips of my daily writing practice.
Bibliosophie.
Progress report number 1. As of my recording this, I have been writing every single day for 2 weeks and 4 days. It is the 16th of January, a Thursday, and I began the last Monday of 2024, which I think was the 30th, 2.5 weeks ago. I've been meaning to do a progress report earlier than this, but I just didn't have the courage, and I was too busy writing. I figured that was more important than chatting to my phone. This project began vaguely as a following, finally, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, tentatively and with some apprehension. One of the major tenets of The Artist's Way is to do morning pages daily, and that is what I have been doing. What is The Artist's Way? If you're not familiar with it, it is a sort of creativity unlocking guide, a series of exercises over the course of 3 months, I believe, 12 weeks, yeah. And there are daily tasks and weekly tasks. I have always been very suspicious of it because I am suspicious of self-help, and I do think that it is self-help. It is meant to unlock an artistry within for both non-current artists and artists alike, but it is also very much, in my opinion, a very kind of capitalism self-help adjacent creation. It is an extremely American creation. It is also very, very religious. So all of these things are things that I do not jibe well with at all. I also am an artist and have a practice that is not perfectly successful, but is actually quite successful. And so in many ways, there's not this need for me to unlock a secretly hidden creative part of me, because I am creative. However, that being said, I am not creative in every way at all, and there are many things that I would actually like to unlock in myself. I am an interpreter. I'm a good interpreter. I'm a very good interpreter, in fact, and that has its own creativity, but I do want to write more. That is the practice that I don't really have. I've talked about it several times on this channel. So that, at the very least, was the thing that I was interested in. It is, I'm going to be honest with you, kind of the only thing that I am interested in now. I have been reading the weekly chapters, and they are not useless to me, and I'm trying to be relatively open-minded, and I think I am being relatively open-minded. There are some tasks that I have attempted to do. There are some tasks that I have, quite frankly, not done. But what I am doing daily is writing morning pages. Supposedly there is no wrong way to do morning pages, but these are not supposed to be kind of planned things. You're supposed to get out of your own way. And I am largely out of my own way. I'm taking what I want to a certain extent. I think there's a lot of good to be had in forcing yourself to think beyond what you think you need. So I am also trying to force myself to do that. But I'm also being gentle with myself about pushing myself too far out of my comfort zone, or in how I'm comfortable and uncomfortable. And also I'm allowing myself the assumption that I have some self-knowledge. So that's what I'm trying constantly to balance in these weeks. How much self-knowledge can I trust in myself, and how much self-knowledge is merely just self-protection that could be useful or feels useful, but is also standing in my way. So I'm trying to avoid self-protection, but trust self-knowledge. And that's a constant kind of game that we have to play with ourselves. Hello, it is Monday once again, and I'm starting week 4 of my writing experiment. I continue to write daily. This will be day 22 in a row, which is great. I have not always managed a full 3 pages. I think that was already the case last time I spoke to you. So I've allowed myself a couple of days of just 2 pages. I also write quite small, so those are my excuses. I also continue to do the cardinal sin, commit the cardinal sin of morning pages, which is to look back over them. When I get into a specific writing mood and am writing on a topic and I know that I could actually use those pages for something, I am going back to them and editing the text. I'm in the process right now of turning one text from my little hand-written scribbles into a typed thing that I do plan to edit and to put on the internet. I feel okay about that. I'm not, I think, overly critical of myself because of that. Maybe I'm deluding myself, but I do believe that I'm still managing to write in a pretty unself-conscious way. And there are plenty of days, in fact, most of the days of so far 22 have yielded writing that I have not looked back on and that I suspect is not utterly devoid of interest, but is mostly slush. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I feel really okay about writing kind of, repetitive nonsense. A lot of it has to do with my body and my mental state. And actually, it's not impossible that one of these days that does turn into something, because my body and my mental state are in a very peculiar moment of my life. So I hope a peculiar moment of my life. I hope something that feels foreign and far away in years to come. But it is an important and kind of pungent time of my life. So the kind of banal quotidian check-ins with myself are in many ways not so banal and quotidian too. We'll see. Maybe the slush pile also gets turned into something one of these days, but I'm definitely not looking over those too terribly much. Greetings from day 28. I have officially written for 4 weeks in a row daily, and I'm quite proud of that. It hasn't been brilliant writing all the time. Some things have been very good, but I am quite happy with the sort of little achievement of it. What have I learned in 4 weeks? How have I been changed? In many ways, not that much, of course, but in some subtle ways, I do think that this has affected me. I was writing about it, in fact, this morning. I don't think that writing daily has been a grounding experience. It can be, because I think I tend to be already analytical of myself and my experience. So it hasn't been kind of a direct line of, I wrote this morning and therefore I feel more something. But in subtle ways, yes. I think it has made me more curious, more satisfied sometimes with myself and my ability to do things. And in that way, it has made me more inspired, especially when I have written things that interested me. Whether or not I think that those pages are useful to me in the future, or just because I had a good time writing them, I definitely found that those days I felt then more inspired and curious about more things. I think it has affected my way of reading, which I figured it would, in that I am writing about my reading more often, and therefore even prior to writing, even as I'm just reading something, it's always a little bit in the back of my mind, oh, how would I write about this? And this has always been the case to a certain extent, but now it's a lot more present. Now I actually carry through with that thought a lot more often. So far more often as I'm reading something, or as I'm watching something, or as I'm just having especially kind of a sensory aesthetic experience, there is a more concrete thought of how would I translate this into words? And I think that's very useful for me. I feel that it is becoming a practice. I do feel like I am used to writing daily, and there is a lot of utility to that. In the next, let's say, 4 weeks, in the next kind of month of my self-imposed program, what I really want to sift through is the utility of my writing in two ways. The product of my writing and how I want to use it. As I've already confessed, let's say, I have really veered off the artist way approach to morning pages, and I do sometimes write with a specific purpose in mind, and I do read over what I have written to mine it for my official writing. And so one of the ways in which I want to really figure out the utility of my writing and kind of solidify the utility of my writing is to continue to mine the kind of good pages actively, because I do get into a bit of a habit of, okay, well, I set it aside and voila, which is fine, which is kind of what you're supposed to do, but what are the next steps? I'm very happy with having done that in the first month, but then what are the next steps, right? You wrote the slush pile, now what do you do with it? And then the other way in which I want to make use of my writing is to do more writing. So I have a practice. It's a feeble, fragile little practice, but I do have a practice. I have written now for 28 days straight, and that's great. And it, I think, has buoyed me. It has taught me to kind of keep writing. What do I do with it? And so I do actually want to do more official writing, not just whatever comes out of my head in the morning, but work on especially my thesis and then other things, but especially setting specific times for my thesis writing. I have done that to a certain extent this month, but seldom. And in fact, I have made myself a little calendar. I am in the process of filling it out, but I have set some very specific times on specific dates in which I am doing thesis writing. Will I actually manage to hold true to all of these planned times? Absolutely not. I already know that I will not, but this will be, I think, a useful and beautiful failure. And ideally, I will be able to tick off regularly, okay, at, for instance, 10 o'clock tomorrow, I do plan to do an hour of sitting in front of my computer, working on my thesis, and it doesn't really matter exactly what I accomplish in that hour, but I shall sit from 10 to 11 and do some work. So I've planned kind of 30-minute to 1 hour chunks of time in which I am forcing myself to just keep doing. And part of that is from the practice of writing useless words, because I have forced myself to fill pages in the past month. So that is something that I have learned to do, that I am continuing to learn to do, and I want to make use of that work in forcing myself to just sit at my computer, or even maybe write longhand. I'll be experimenting with that, but accomplish an official writing task. I wanted to share from Eileen Myles, For Now, which is about writing. It's a long lecture, essentially, or a long essay on the process of writing, and also just Myles' life, and it's very Eileen Mylesian, and I recommend it, actually. But 3 citations jump out to me. The point is to be here, to be present, which I think is the truly hard part, and yet I keep coming back to it. It's undeniably true, and writing it, turns out, is the easiest way to copy that feeling. And I've been trying to do that in writing. I think literature is wasted time. I don't think there's anything good about it. It's not a moral project, except in this profound aspect of wasting time. And finally, I wasted time absolutely like I knew I should. Well, I could. The waste was like a frame, an award, an attainment. Literature is waste for sure, but the award was just time itself. I do think that there is truly a beauty in the waste. There's a use in the waste of these pages, and that has been an encouraging thing for me. So yes, before I leave you, I have 5 tips that are sort of for myself, 5 reflections on what I have found useful that you can conceive of as tips if you want to write more often. I wrote them down this morning, so here you are. Number 1, writing early. By that I mean early in the day and early in the project. So yes, morning pages are a thing, because I do think that it is easier to write in the morning, even just to be kind of done with the exercise. As I said, I don't know how much it sets me up for the day. I know it sets people up for a lot of people up, but I do write better. My brain is more, I think, plastic and free, and it is a good way to start the day. But I also mean writing early, as in writing before you have to, right? To write before you're ready. So if you have a project to write every day in February, start at the end of January. You may as well write before you're, excuse me, I'm choking up on my words. Write before you have all your research. Write before you have completely formulated the thought. I want to remove some preciousness around my writing, and that will come back soon. And that, I think, includes stripping away the fresh start and being ready to write. Just start it and do a bad job, and then kind of do a better job as you get warmed up. Number 2, writing as a means of realizing and deciding, literally even realizing, making into a reality why it is you even want to write. I don't know why you might want to write. I want to write because I want to write, but there are other reasons to write. It could be to get rid of your emotions, formulate your emotions. It could be because you're a painter and you want to get creative with your fingers in a different way. There are many, many reasons to write. I have a very straightforward reason, and it is because I want to write a thesis, and then I also want to write other things. I'm effectively working on a sort of memoir of my current life episode, if we're going to be perfectly honest. And I'm also writing to keep myself sane. I'm writing to keep myself alive. I'm writing to keep myself self. So I have a project, but I'm also kind of constantly reformulating for myself what is that project in my pages. And if you're wondering what you can write about on a daily basis, actually the thought process of what it is you're writing about is a helpful thing to write about, in my opinion. Sort out practice, preciousness, and perfectionism. Part of the reason I'm happy to have done 28 days of consecutive writing is perfectionism. It's just having a perfect streak. It's very neat. It's also a very boring reason, but it's a valid one to a certain extent. Another reason I'm happy for it is that it does mean a practice. However, I am constantly trying to sort out the pushing myself to do something that comes out of perfectionism versus that comes out of striving for practice. And we have to realize that practice must come out of ritual and daily doing, but also it must come out of imperfection, because then there is never a practice. Then it's never practice, it's just somehow this magical finished product, right? So that's always a bit of a tango. And what do I mean by preciousness is the, being, as I mentioned before, being ready to write about something or that, but even just the tactile, objective preciousness of writing. And especially if you're writing by hand, which I am doing, and which I do encourage you to do. Yes, it's very nice to have a wonderful pen that you love. Yes, it's very nice to have the perfect notebook to write in, but I think we get too caught up in the ritual of writing to the hindrance of actually doing the writing. So I think it's important to strike the balance between what are the kind of creature comforts that are necessary to aid in creativity, in productivity, and what is really just procrastination. And that is different for different people. I will also say that is true in reading as well, and especially in close reading, and all of the kind of objects and actions of close reading. Yes, you're underlining things and you're taking notes and you have your tabs and you have your organizational things. How much of that is useful and how much of that is precious? And you get to decide. I mean, I'm not going to tell you. Writing in response. So this is also not very artist way-y of me, but I have found that when I don't know what to write, I am really, really aided in writing as a response to something. And because I do so much reading, that thing is a citation. I have found that it can be very interesting analytically to have an interpretation, and also that I can just get wild, right? Because I'm not being tested on how I explicate a poem. I can just turn it into a personal story. It doesn't matter. But I like having the kind of seed of something. I encourage you, if you're stuck and want to write, to just even pick a word from a book and go from there, to rephrase a citation, to retell a story, or if it's not via reading, although if you're on this channel, you probably are also a reader, to explicate a song, to tell the story of a song, to let a song create a new story in you, to try to translate a piece of visual art into words. So I find that this sort of multi-sensory, ekphrastic approach to writing is very helpful for me, but that's also who I am. Maybe it will help you. And finally, number 5, writing through a difficult thought, whether that's emotional or in my case, it's really kind of things that I know are important and I just do not want to formulate into words, things that I'm putting off. All of the various thoughts that I think to myself, ooh, this could be an interesting little essay. Ooh, this could be an interesting paragraph in my dissertation. Okay, well, Sophie, if it's interesting, write it. And this is where I am pushing myself, and it is deeply uncomfortable and sucks, actually, quite honestly. But again, it's finite. So just to do it for 2 to 3 pages, and maybe it's terrible and maybe it doesn't actually yield anything, but just to do it. So I have found this very helpful for thesis writing. And if you two are trying to do kind of a big project, it might be helpful to you. If you're trying to unpack a thought, the sorts of things that you might have a conversation with someone about, write it on the page, and also allow that page to be completely not the right type of writing. You're stuck in a paper writing in a specific way. So let the morning page version of trying to unpack that thought be much more outlandish and repetitious and kind of stupid, but maybe it will yield something. For me, it actually really has yielded things. And in February and for the remainder of January and for February, I really want to push myself to do that even more often, to pick the things that I'm too lazy to actually write about and actually write about them. All right, that has been my first month, 28 days of daily writing. I plan to keep doing it. I may do a second video about month 2 or maybe month 2 and 3. Let me know if you want to keep hearing about the process. It's been good. I'm quite happy. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.